Hi guys, we're back with part 3 of chapter 4. We're going to be talking about identifying common insect pests and also some beneficial insects. So first, especially for the Oregon State Resources, they have a field guide on pages 49 through 52 of your handbook, and this is going to be common pests. Now this is specific to Oregon, and some of their common pests are also our common pests. I did take a look at it, and all of their pests are present in Kansas, but not all of them are some of our most common pests. So you can take a look at that section, but their pests wouldn't necessarily here in Kansas be our most common pests. Instead, I would go ahead and send you to our website, www.shawnee.ksu.edu. If you go to the Lawn and Garden page, click on Educational Materials, and then click on Vegetables and Herbs. There are going to be some insect pest guides on there, but there's also going to be a lot of crop guides. So if you want to try to find your specific crop, click on that publication, and then as you read through, it will talk about the pests that you can expect to have with those crops. There's also a copy of the Kansas Garden Guide in that same section, and so if there are any crops that you don't find a specific publication for, you should find those in the Kansas Garden Guide. And of course, all of that is free. So first we're going to talk about aphids. Aphids can sometimes look like this. They're kind of bluish gray. They can also be bright orange or yellow. They come in a lot of different colors. They are visible to the naked eye. Aphids feed on almost everything, ornamental and vegetables. They will eat a lot of different things. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and they will suck the juices out of a lot of different plants. With our aphids, though, we're really lucky in that we have multiple beneficial insects that prey on aphids. So on the left here, we have lacewing larvae, this kind of brown guy right here. They both look kind of scary. And then we have lady beetle larvae. So lady beetles, a lot of us call them ladybugs. Same thing. The larvae look not as cute and sweet as ladybugs do. They're pretty vicious looking with these kind of spiky looking appendages here. But this is actually an aphid. Lime green is a very common aphid color that it is eating, which is awesome. So we love our lacewings. We love our lady beetles. This is, of course, a picture of the adult ladybug, the lady beetle. So what's really important to remember is that if you see the larva or the adult, that means that there's a beneficial insect in the area that you should try to avoid spraying because they're trying to do their job. Now, if they come in the aphid population, if you see an aphid population like this, no ladybugs in the area, and the next day you see one, that may not be enough to take care of your aphid population. But it's just an awareness that they're there, that they're trying to help you with your pest problem so that you don't spray, or try to be careful about where you're spraying. And then this is an adult lacewing. These are really commonly mistaken for a predator, or not, I'm sorry, not a predator, a pest insect, but they are actually a predatory insect. They will feed on aphids. And their eggs are so difficult to see. As you can see, that's a microscopic image there. But the lacewings themselves are very small, but you can see them with your eye. The important thing with beneficials is that they, like I said before, they can't combat a large population, but they are there. I think when we see insects, we just think, oh, there's an insect in my house, in my garden, on my plant. It's bad. It's bad. It's got to be doing something bad. 90% of insects are beneficial insects. They do something that benefits us as human beings, or they're neutral to us. They don't have anything to do with us. They eat an insect that doesn't bother us, and they mate in a way that doesn't bother us, and feed in a way that doesn't bother us, and they're just off doing their own little thing that's completely separate from us. So you do want to make sure that you can properly identify insects before you go spraying or stomping or squashing things in your garden. And a really great resource is your local extension office here in Shawnee County, the Shawnee County Extension Office. We do identify insects. We're pretty good at it. We always like more practice. So feel free to bring those samples in if you're not sure about something. But if you see a lacewing, or you see a lady beetle or their larva in your garden, you know that you have something good going on and you want to try to let them do their thing. Spider mites are a really, really common problem here in Kansas. And again, they will prey on just about anything, ornamental and vegetable. Like what you're going to see with spider mites are these kind of spots, the mottling across the leaves. It almost looks like something was splattered, like paint was splattered on the leaves, really, really small little spots all across it. Now, under a microscope, this is what that looks like. You can see the kind of white that was the dotting here on these leaves in between. These are their eggs and the adults. You're not going to see them easily with your naked eye. You can see some spider mites, big spider mites with your naked eye, but all you see is just a tiny, tiny, tiny little blur. Most of the time with spider mites, what you're going to see is the damage, and then you put it under the microscope, and then you're going to see the spider mites themselves. Again, piercing, sucking mouth parts, so they're sucking out those plant juices. And then, of course, spider mites get their name because they have webbing. If you are seeing a lot of webbing on your plants, you haven't been doing a good job monitoring. Once you start to see the webbing and you're seeing a lot of it, I mean, people bring in plants and they're like, why are these little spiders all over my plants? Because they just see the webbing. A lot of times it's spider mites. So we've seen some really bad cases coming into our office with just webbing all over it. If you do see a leaves that look like this, and you know that your plant is susceptible to spider mites, which many are, and you see maybe some eggs, you can see some adults, or you see some webbing, that would be a good example about what we talked about earlier with your IPM, where you would want to remove those leaves. Because they're so small, they move fairly slowly as far as they're not going to, en masse jump off the leaf onto a healthy leaf. That would be a good time to go through and remove all the infected leaves, bag them, and remove them from the area. So imported cabbage worm, you almost can't see him in the picture. Do you see the cabbage worm? You see his excrement and you see his feeding damage, but he is right here. And caterpillars, which is technically a caterpillar, can be some of the hardest to see in the garden because they do such a good job of camouflaging themselves. They want to camouflage themselves from birds and from us, so they can be really hard to see. Again, this would be a good candidate for removing the leaf. You may have seen all these holes on the leaves. You may have seen the excrement and you can't see the caterpillar. Remove the leaf, and in this case, you would have removed the problem with it. So caterpillars are a good candidate for removing leaves as well to get rid of that problem. So they feed on cabbage, they feed on broccoli and cauliflower. Cucumber beetles is... Oh, I'm sorry. It says cucumber beetles. This is still cabbage worm. So ignore the heading there, but the image is correct. The adult is a white moth, and you will see that around your cabbage and your broccoli plants. So if you see the adult, try to catch and kill the adult moth, because that one adult will lay many, many eggs. The eggs just kind of look like yellowish, greenish spots. I know this isn't the best picture. The larvae are going to be very difficult to see. Again, they're going to blend in with the leaf. You can sometimes see them if they kind of take on more of a orangish yellow tint. But again, if you just look at the caterpillar there, it can be really difficult. It even kind of has a line to make it look like the midrib there, that main vein. So removing the leaf where you see the damage, a lot of times they'll stay and feed on the entire leaf until they're done and move. So that can be one good way to get rid of it. But as you look closer, eventually you probably would have seen the caterpillar to remove it. So now we're on to cucumber beetles, which are one of our worst vegetable pests. They're a little bit easier to see. They're going to be one of our bigger vegetable pest insects, and they made themselves nice and flashy. They're bright yellow, and they have spots on them, yellow to green. So they're easy to see, but they fly. So easy to spot. If you can grab them and dispose of them, great, but they do fly away, so they can be tricky to get a hold of. Cucumber beetles have a lot of victims in the vegetable family and fruit. Cucumber, cantaloupe, squash, pumpkins, any type of gourds, watermelon, beans, corn, potatoes. That should be two. There's no such thing as corn, potatoes, corn and potatoes. And any other crops can be susceptible. Many other crops can be susceptible. So cucumber beetles are another big pest. They're kind of up there with the aphids in that they'll prey on a lot of different things, which is why it's important to know if you have watermelon that they can be a pest, so that you're looking for them. But this is a good one just to have on your general list as a gardener. If you see these in your garden, you're going to want to try to remove them and scout for any more. Flea beetles are also really common, but unlike some of our other pests, they're not as much of a threat to the plant. So flea beetles are really small. They're kind of generic looking. They're, they don't have any really distinctive characteristics like the cucumber beetle with its bright spots. You're going to see it a lot on things like eggplant. Sometime, you can see it on cucumber, things like that. But what they're going to do is it's almost like shots, like a shotgun. They're going to put little bullet holes all across your plants. Because the holes are so small, you can actually see in this example, they're not even chewing all the way through the leaf. And sometimes the leaf can kind of close that hole up. Sometimes they're a little bit larger. Typically, they're not going to kill the plant, but anything that stresses the plant makes it more susceptible for other pests and other diseases. So I'm not going to say that they're not a concern. They're not as much of a concern, but it's good to know the difference between something like this and another more serious pest so that you know when you need to start taking action. If you were in a garden and you saw these holes and you saw a flea beetle, you should still try to remove it, but you probably wouldn't want to go so far as to spray for something like this. And they can feed on watermelon, pumpkin, peas, eggplants, sweet potatoes, beets, spinach, strawberries, and potatoes. You also want to think about your crop when you're thinking about your tolerance level, about how much you can stand. If they're feeding on the leaves of strawberries, but you're still getting good fruit production from your strawberries, I would say that's not as much of a concern. But if they're feeding on the leaves of your spinach, what you're eating is the spinach leaf. So you probably would have a much lower threshold with something like spinach than something that you're not consuming the leaves on, like strawberries or potatoes. And finally, slugs. Slugs can be a big garden pest for a lot of us. Again, they just feed on so many things that it would take a long time to list them all. A lot of our vegetable pests also are ornamental pests. Most wives' tales are not rooted in research and are typically not effective, like giving, juicy fruit gum to moles. That's not an effective way to control moles. I don't know how that rumor got started, but we get that all the time. That's not how you control moles. But this one, putting out a dish of beer for slugs, actually is a really effective way to control them. You can put out a shallow dish with beer and they will come to drink it and they will fall in and drown. A dish like this is perfect, something that takes a lot of effort for them to get over the top. And then once they have their heads down, they're very likely to fall in. So a dish this shape is perfect for something like slugs. So for more information, more pest control information, more about specific crops or any other information that you'd like, we can find publications on specific pests on our website, which again is www.shawnee.ksu.edu. And some of the publications I would recommend, we have a great publication called Early Season Vegetable Pests, and it's self-explanatory, but it's very helpful if you're just getting started. We also have, as I said, specific crops, so asparagus, onions, beets. We have a publication for each of those. I like those because they're nice and short. So rather than reading the entire Kansas Garden Guide, if all you're going to grow is watermelon and tomatoes, just read watermelon and tomatoes. And then you've got maybe not all the information you'll ever need, but you know their major pests, their major diseases to look out for, and how to take care of them. So those are really nice. And then, of course, like I said before, we have our Kansas Garden Guide online, which is comprehensive. It's free. You can also purchase it in our office for $6, but it is free online as long as you don't mind looking at it there, printing it at home. And that really has all the information you could want about vegetable gardening here in Kansas. So a little at-home activity for you. You want to look at the crop by crop guide on harvesting, which is pages 55 through 75, and think about if there are any specific crops you'd like to learn how to harvest, how to store, or how to prepare. And you can come to class with those questions next week. So next week, we're going to be talking about harvesting and using your bounty. We're going to be using the crop by crop guide. We're going to talk about storage and nutrition, gardening for your health, and also talking about food safety. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.